Well, with me is Kate Lord-Brennan, and really the subject I wanted to talk to you about is what's going on in your department, because Tim Glover's made it very vocal that there's been issues, and he feels a bit slighted, I think, to be polite, of the way it's gone. He's now removed himself from this. So can we get the story from your end of what went on and why has he gone?
Yeah, do you know what, it really has been overdone in the way it's been put forward actually and explained.
Who overdone that?
I'll explain what happened,
okay.
Because actually it's really quite simple. So in more recent months, because of the cost of living crisis and also some of the initiatives that have been rolled out to do with the island's response to Ukraine and other things as well, there's been more and more social policy going on in the Cabinet Office, which isn't surprising because there's a core policy team now, and it's sort of part of the intention to improve that, and also just the general response that government is needed to give and support. So last week after a Cabinet Office departmental meeting, I initiated a conversation with Tim Glover just to say, it was on my mind.
Because he's in your department, right?
Yes, he is. He's departmental member in Cabinet Office. So I said it was on my mind that more and more Cabinet Office had these different sorts of social policy interventions or setting of that sort of policy, and was thinking about the potential for a conflict of interest because Mr Glover has an important role on the Social Affairs Policy Review Committee. So
you flagged a conflict of interest?
The potential for it, and it was a good time to have the discussion because actually there's, it would have been seen, there has been sort of some movements in government departments. So my purpose of raising that was that, it's my initiative as Minister to have that conversation with Tim. I said to him, what do you think? He said, actually, I agree.
Oh, he agreed?
Yes.
Right.
He said he agreed. And he said that he would think about it, and I said, well, it might be better just to sort of settle this today because I'm conscious that there is going to be a reshuffle, and you might want to consider another department, something like that, and so that was kind of the position we got to in a very short, very positive conversation where he agreed, and then later that day, as we'd expect, because he'd basically come to this position, he wrote to resign his position because he would have to resign it, as a natural consequence of that, and was perfectly fine with that, on the basis that he wanted to continue, what should be a very good role in the Social Affairs Policy Review Committee. So there was no conflict, there was no pushing out, there hasn't been this thing about ministers not being comfortable with members speaking up and speaking out, from council or elsewhere. So that's just simply not how it was. But obviously, as a minister, you need to think about how things are interacting. And I absolutely, think that there is a very important role for the Social Affairs Policy Review Committee to play. So on balance, it was a good time for me to initiate that conversation with Mr Glover. And so some of the things that have been sort of indicated around it, council not being happy and ministers not wanting members to speak out.
I haven't seen the whole thing, but it's leaking
correct.
to Manx Radio or something, the story, or something first before?
I don't know how Manx Radio got hold of it.
Right.
It wouldn't seem, a normal course of events to sort of...
You didn't leak it then?
No, I mean, this was a very simple matter that felt like it was concluded really, really quickly. As I said, Mr Glover recognised that, was like, yeah, absolutely, see, that's fine.
But he's not happy.
Wrote to resign, and then subsequently there's been all these other influences. But what I would say is that, ministers work with members of their departments in loads of different ways. We've got some very vocal, and rightly so, why not, backbenchers who speak up and speak out, also hold departmental roles. There is no issue in that respect. So that's my response to, that's the reality of what happened. It was very simple.
Two different stories here, though, completely, by sounds it.
Yeah, so I guess people might have their own, reason for putting things across in a different way, but that's the situation.
So you
as
didn't
to what
fire
happened.
him? You didn't do anything?
No, I initiated a conversation, which was the right thing to do, given that since he became a member of Cabinet Office, there has been a change in some of the things that we do, and actually, I am somebody who absolutely respects scrutiny and challenge. Anybody who knows me in how I handle things, or actually just knows me anyway, will know that. So the idea that there's been some kind of, pushing out or, wanting somebody not to speak up, or that anything is interfering in anybody representing constituency views is just 100% not the case.
So you're disappointed the way this was handled by Mr. Glover then?
I just move on, I've got loads of things on my plate, so I don't really, I just simply, move on, move on to the next thing really. But I just think it's important to flag, because I don't think there is that sort of culture in Tynwald. I think it's unfair on, council ministers to be that inference that there is that approach. As I say, lots of members speak up, represent their views, but as minister, I did want to have that conversation, because actually it was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Mr. Glover, obviously welcome here to give his version. We're obviously going to be talking about his first year as well. But you things getting played out like that doesn't help you, I'm guessing, or you're worried about like that sort of PR being done in public rather than just behind closed doors?
Well, I just think, what are you going to do really? I mean, I think that there is more engagement between council and Tynwald and government and the public than there ever has been. So I guess from that perspective, I think that it doesn't really stand up.
It does seem these two different versions of events going on. That's all. But you stand by what you said. So
that is what happened. That is how it went, and I absolutely wish Tim well. And there's no issue with members speaking up on policy issues in debate or otherwise. Ultimately, though, a minister would need to be comfortable with the setup around him or her in terms of political members, and and so that's why you've got to sort of consider these things. And there's probably a range of things that the Social Affairs Policy Review Committee, in that important Tynwald scrutiny role, can be looking at broadly, across all the different areas that it can sort of scrutinise on. And I'm sure that will happen. And wish Mr. Glover well. And I feel like it's just kind of been blown up or maybe portrayed to be something that, in fact, it wasn't really the case for whatever reason, that might be.